Okay, welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, J.R. Stewart.
And I am your co-host, Tommy Duncan. It is Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And if it is Wednesday night, Jimmy, it is
Black Men Speak.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. We want to thank everyone for coming out and hanging out with us this evening. We have a very exciting show for you tonight, and I am definitely looking forward to it, Jimmy.
So let's give a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. And if you haven't already, please hit that like button. Spread the word, so share, and then subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. So, Tom, I want you to introduce our guest and tell us what the topic is.
All right. For those of us who have been listening to us for a while, we know that we spend a lot of time and energy on a lot of subjects having to do that are core to our community. And, part of that is family, and part of that is education, things that are fundamental to the success of any group of people. And tonight is no exception. So we're going to have two special guests tonight, Mr. Terrance Zachary and Miss Candra Burnett, both of them educators who are out there on the grind every day trying to help your kids make sure that they can take care of you when you get old and need someone to support them. So we're going to have them to introduce themselves very briefly, but both of them work in public schools within two different school districts. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off by having them introduce themselves. But the topic for tonight is the absence of Black fathers in our homes, public enemy number one in our schools. Folks, we know we have talked a lot about the impact that fathers make in our families, in our schools, and in our children, and this is no different than that. Right. So what we're going to do is have each of them to introduce themselves, tell us a little about their background and what they do, and then we are going to go ahead and dig into our discussion. But ladies first, we're going to start off with Miss Burnett and then Mr. Zachary. Miss Burnett, tell us about yourself.
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Candra Burnett. I am currently a 9th grade English teacher in A-Leaf ISD. It's a suburb just outside or inside of the Houston area, one way or the other. I teach in a lower socioeconomic school district, high minority school district. I've been in teaching since September 2020. So I'm what I guess people call a COVID teacher. I had a 5-year plan, a whole plan to get into education, and just unfortunately, due to the totality of circumstances, fortunately, due to the totality of circumstances, I ended up jumping into the career field earlier than expected.
Good for you.
Thank you. I was working for a major insurance company, and I just really wasn't satisfied with the reaction to the George Floyd incident. And I'm just a firm believer, if not me, then who? Somebody by the grace of God reached out to me and said, hey, I know you've got this 5-year plan, but, I have a way for you to make it into teaching earlier if that's something you're interested in. So that's kind of how I got into it a lot faster than I originally planned.
Okay.
So that's me.
All right, Mr. Zachary, introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Hello, everyone. My name is Terrance Zachary. I am a 8th grade social studies teacher in Waco ISD. Waco is a small, not too small city in between Dallas and Austin. I'm a middle school coach, boys athletics, coach basketball, track, and soccer. Um, I love teaching, love coaching. I got into education. This is actually my fourth year as a teacher, and the fourth year as a coach. I started off in 2018. That was my first like full school year.
Okay.
And it was very crazy because the very next year, after I felt that I knew, more or less the ropes of teaching, COVID hit. And so we go remote for a year and a half, so that, was a major adjustment. But like I said, I love it, love everything about it. I went to Texas State University, and upon graduating, I was the youth director at the YMCA in Waco. And yeah, I was in charge of youth sports and the summer program. And so been around this age group for 7 years now. And I love it. This middle school age group, I feel like it's a good place for me. So that's, yeah.
Gotcha. So let me ask, with a couple of questions. So you've been in the business of teaching since 2018, Mrs. Zachary, and you, Ms. Burnett, you actually started during COVID. So you don't have a frame of reference of teaching prior to COVID. So I'd like to maybe start off with Mr. Zachary here.
Yeah.
Tell us about your most significant observations. And I know you were only 2 years in before COVID hit,
Right.
but as you were kind of getting your water wings under you, then the COVID thing hit, everybody had to go virtual. Tell us a little bit about what that was like. What were the most important things you took away from that? How you think that impacted education for young people?
I would say
now, and I can't say that it's completely behind us. We know that COVID's out there, it's not
Of
going
course,
away,
of
but
course.
we're getting back to the normalcy.
Right. I would say that COVID definitely had a negative impact on school in general, just from how classes are run to just the education process as a whole. Before COVID, like I was still learning. It was my first 2 years, year and a half, but it was a lot easier to teach. It was a lot easier to teach because it was normal, right? You had textbooks, you could give paper copies. There wasn't as much scare or much apprehension about germs and just of course you want to be safe in school, but it wasn't just the biggest thing. It wasn't that people were getting sick and getting fatally sick before COVID hit, and so it wasn't as big of a deal. Whenever everyone went virtual for that next school year, that took a big hit on, I feel like, on the education process, because like the kids had to learn how to use technology. Kids are still not very adapt to technology yet. They only want to use it for
fun. Wait a minute. I'm confused.
You caught it.
We're talking about an entire generation of kids who grew up on technology, I know parents who let their 6, 7-year-old kids, have an iPhone or
iPad,
an
laptop.
Android. And so they are born on technology. They don't know not having technology. So I'm confused when you say getting adapted to technology when that seems to be all they know. You put a kid in front of an old school television and they're trying to swipe on the television.
Exactly.
So help me understand what that means when you say adapt to the technology. I would think that would be their comfort zone.
Well, maybe adapt to the technology in a learning environment.
That's exactly what it is.
Purposes, yes.
The academic purposes. That's exactly what it is. You get at our school district, every kid has a laptop.
Wow.
Like a Chromebook or a laptop. Every student. They gave it to them. Didn't have to pay anything. It's yours. As soon as they get it, they think it's theirs for games. It's theirs for YouTube. It's theirs to post videos. It's theirs for chat. And so that's one of our biggest issues with trying to assign work when everything was virtual. And we're trying to assign work, and you're expecting to walk by and see a screen full of work going on, a worksheet or something, and it's YouTube or it's a game. And so that just the whole process of trying to get kids to, yes, this technology is helpful, is good, is yours, you can use it. But yes, we're in school, let's use it for a school purpose. And That's what it's still an ongoing process now. Even though, like I said, we're moving more back to normalcy, it's still an ongoing process.
So, Ms. Burnett, you started teaching in the midst of COVID. I remember being out of town in March of 2020, and I was on a business trip, and I was, pretty much told you need to come back home and shut everything down until, we say. And you said you started in September of 2020.
Yes.
In
Actually, when everything went awry and with COVID, I was actually on a business trip too. I had just earned a promotion actually, and they had to send us home because they were fearful that the airports was going to shut down. So it was
couldn't get home, right?
Very scary times. But yes, I started just shortly after the school year began, and fortunately, because I started in September, we started migrating back into the school building in October.
Okay.
So we started having, parents could opt in to send their kids to school 2 to 3 days a week. So they didn't have to send their kids. So we had very few kids in person. And then I had to simultaneously teach the kids online if there was that class. Yeah.
So what was that like? I mean, teaching kids face to face, plus you're having to manage online. How does that work?
Well, the biggest headache is attendance, but I don't think that's that's never been different. But it was definitely different. The dynamic in person was definitely more different than the dynamic online, and the leveling of engagement was different as well, right? So if I have a student that's off task in person, I can utilize, moving myself nearby, using proximity. I could talk to them, I could tap them, I could give them that one-on-one help. A lot of kids, and especially, and I this might push us into our conversation, but my young men are less likely to ask questions than my young ladies are. My young ladies are not shy about asking a question if they're confused. My young men will just sit there and you'll think that they understand what's going on until you realize that they don't,
The proverbial, what did I just say?
Yeah. So,
gotcha.
It was a lot of crickets online, a lot of black faces. I definitely I can appreciate in-person teaching a lot more now, having had that experience.
Okay. And so now that we're going back to most school districts pretty much being back on site, you both have two different perspectives. Taking away from this experience over the last year and a half or so, how do you think it's changed teaching? How do you think it's changed the delivery of education from your points of view? From where you were, during this COVID period to now, things getting back to more of a traditional delivery process face-to-face in the classroom.
I personally think that it's much more difficult. You've always had children that were, I'm sure, a wide array of knowledge base, right? So you have some, multiple levels, but now there's so many, like every student is on a completely different level, and you're having to scaffold and differentiate for each individual student. And some of the questions they're asking at the ninth, for me in particular, some of my students I have a 17-year-old ninth grader, so my students range anywhere from 13 to 17. And just the questions that they're asking, it baffles me, the things that they don't know, even if they're not an English language learner, some things that they're unfamiliar with. So it's definitely like Mr. Zachary said, it's scary, and it's worse. They've lost a lot.
So, Mr. Zachary, tell us the roles of parents and how that has played into this whole process during that period, after that period, because I know in talking to some parents, I think they have is it appropriate, better appreciation for what teachers, deal with on a day-to-day basis, the services that schools deliver, to their students, especially when we look at, some of the, lower, moderate, and or poor areas where you have teachers, who are doing that. So it's not just a matter of just the delivery of education, but basic things that you don't think about. We got to feed them, 3, 4, 5 times a day, as opposed to maybe once, at dinner at night. So kind of talk to us about, from the parenting end of that. What has it been like on that end, working with the parents, transitioning back, the influence and the impact that it's had on parents now that we're getting back to normal?
I would say that parent involvement has increased simply because it's needed to over that COVID period. Like you said, it was a lot different because, like you said, parents finally figured out what teachers were kind of going through. Yeah, you're at home expected to kind of help your student teach, like learn these lessons, and you kind of see what your child is doing. You know what I mean? And that's what we deal with on a day-to-day basis with 30 kids in a classroom. And so, like you said, with the technology and the communication, like I said, my school is 98% economically disadvantaged. And so when we went virtual for majority of the year, that was the main issue, having to give out hotspots and ways for them to access the internet because a lot of homes didn't have ready Wi-Fi or access to internet for the children to do their work. And so that was, a major concern, and especially parents wanting their students, their child to not fall behind, you know what I mean? But that did actually help with communication because parents actually made an effort to come up to the school, to call out, to do what they needed to do to reach out and actually help their child. And so that has kind of carried over now that we're kind of moving back to normalcy, and that's helping a lot now that the communication is a little bit more open. But you can also see instances where parents are just happy to just drop them off again and just let the teachers kind of more or less deal with all of the issues and then not worry about anything at home. Like you said, it went from, okay, they can get breakfast and lunch to now, you have to feed them 3, 4 times a day instead of just at dinner. But now back at school, okay, they can stay after school and get an after school snack and maybe not even have to worry about dinner. So now we're kind of, it's various levels to it. Like Ms. Burnett said also. But then on that same note too, you can definitely see where students did fall off academically because of being virtual. Some people didn't have access to internet, and so you could see evidence of children not doing work for months at a time, but they still got moved on to the next grade.
What we call social promotion, or what we used to call social promotion. I don't know what they call it.
Exactly, and that was on a wide scale. And so now you have children in grade levels where academically they're 2, 3 grade levels behind.
Well, since you bring that up, I just recently ran across a study that suggests that black boys in California, and this may be it may be the same in other states, I don't know, but this paper dealt with California specifically, and said the average black student in school is 3 to 4 years behind their white counterpart. And if they're 3 or 4 years behind their white counterpart, I'd imagine they're even further behind their Asian counterpart. Because we know that they tend to be at the top of the heap when it comes to education and earnings. And part of that, they attribute that to the absentee father syndrome, that father's not being around. In fact, I spent 2 weeks reading just tons of papers, thinking I would find one paper that suggests that not having a father in the household is a good thing. Yet I found none. So it lets me know that pretty much everyone can agree, all the people who are experts in the subject matter can agree that a father not being in the household is not a good thing. Can you guys speak to some of the things that you see or think are happening with our kids, for the ones that you know are growing up in households with a mother and no father?
Time. I personally think it's a lack of time. So if you have a mother that's in the household, time and energy, I should say as well. If you have a mother in the household and she's juggling all of these hats, where do you find the time to continuously be on, this child? And even if you have your foot proverbially on their neck, growing up, my students, I teach 9th grade. My students are bigger than you.
In the 9th grade.
In 9th grade. Wow.
I'm not in 14, bigger than you. You know, so as a black, I'm 5'2". You know, I would say I'm pretty much average height, average build for a woman, right? There's only so many things that I can do to get this child to do what it is that I need them to do. I've had parents say, I've tried calling the police, I've tried calling CPS, I've tried, you know, after they've, of course, exhausted all their, what they feel like are the options at their disposal, they're hopeless, you know, and they really don't know where to go from there. So you just, it's more than just them not being there. It's all the things that come with them, you know, not being there. There's no fear, there's no motivation, there's no goals, there's no, you know, nobody to look to, there's no role models. And not even just in your house, right? My family is majority female. My grandmother had 5 women. I have all aunts, I have no uncles.
Mm-hmm. What in your, I mean, coming from a woman's point of view, what difference or the most significant ways it makes a difference with the presence of it? Maybe not biological father, you know, maybe it's a father figure, maybe it's a stepfather, maybe it's an uncle, grandfather. Help me understand from a woman's point of view why that, what impact that has.
It's a domino effect.
Unpack that for us then.
It's a domino effect because you have to be careful, right? So and abandonment is well issues. So you have to be careful who you allow into your child's life. So I grew up in a single parent household as well. And, you know, my mom dated, but ultimately she and the man didn't work out, right? And so now I have a second abandonment issue because, you know, she had a child with him. He comes in, he treats her like she's, you know what I'm saying, the best child in the world. She's getting gifts. We live in the same house, but experience 2 different Christmases, you know, because she's getting something that I'm not getting, you know, so then you grow up and, you know, you have these issues. You have a kid, perhaps out of wedlock. You're trying to teach a man how to be a man. You've never had a man in your life. So all you're doing is what you know, the best of what you know, or what you think that you want. But I have to be honest, you know, what we want as women isn't always what's best for us, you know. So we bring these men.
Miss Burnett said it. I did.
Thank you. That's what I'm trying to say. We didn't say it.
Normally, I'm the one getting in trouble on the show.
Exactly. Because if we say something like that, boy, we talking about a strap coming out.
And I said we may not. So, you know, there's no absolutes there. So, of course, there are women who, you know, are pursuing, you know, these good, you know, men. But unfortunately, that's not all of women. And it's not just because we're Black either. You know, I'm saying women in general, you know. So.
Right. So that's very poignant. I appreciate you bringing that out. So, Mrs. Zachary, let's talk, because, I mean, you're a teacher, you're a coach, you're a mentor. So you see a lot of this too, and you have a unique perspective as well. Let's get your perspective and what you see on what Ms. Burnett is talking about and the influence that it has on the outcomes of young Black men in particular, because we understand that it influences both sides. But, you know, when we talk about the statistics on how far behind our young men are compared to their gender peers, young Black women, we see more girls graduating from school, going to college. It's just a different ball of wax for young Black men, and the absence of fathers has a significant role. But give me a perspective, because you work with some of these guys, and I presume they look up to you in a fatherly way, depending on your role.
They do. I feel like all of the students and athletes that I coach and teach, male-wise, I feel like I have a good relationship. I don't feel like I butt heads with any of them. I feel like I know how to talk to them, approach them, because like I said, I do know majority of them don't have a father figure at home. And not that I'm just the oldest, I'm 27 years old, you know what I mean? But I do feel like I have some wisdom to give, some insight on what they might be going through. I knew what it's like to be a 7th, 8th grade boy. You know, I know what it's like when you're first starting out as a sport. I know what it feels like to not excel at something, you know what I mean? So I know a lot of what they're going through and what they're feeling. A lot of what I see, especially as a coach, is the lack of effort and the lack of toughness, I would say, in a lot of my young men, especially my young Black boys. I would say that. At my school, we have a majority population Hispanic, and the second biggest population is African American. And in our athletics, we have majority Hispanic because that's the majority of our students. Right, and they are our hardest workers in our athletics period. Even though our young black boys are more athletic.
What do you attribute that to?
I attribute that to the way they were brought up. Simple as that. I think because I would say I've been coaching for 4 years. In those 4 years, I've interacted with three fathers.
4 years.
Wait. Back up. Repeat that again.
I've been coaching for 4 years. I've interacted with three fathers. Three fathers that have in 4 years. Three fathers that in football, basketball, track, and soccer, the four sports that I coach.
And you coach you coach four sports.
Four sports.
And in 4 years,
you
have interacted with three fathers in 4 years coaching four sports
that have come up to me to ask what they can do to help, what they can do to better their child. About three.
Okay, and so it's primarily the mothers then. Overwhelming, I get that, but only three. Now, what about in your role as a teacher? I mean, one would think that there would be a significant number of fathers or let's say male figures, whether that's the stepfather or someone like that who may have some role. But what about as a teacher? I mean, if it's only three as a coach. I'm just saying.
As a teacher, not about the same. Not too many more. Majority of when you pull up contact information for a student you want to call home, it's almost always mother, grandmother, aunt, older sister. Very rarely is it father, stepfather, uncle, grandfather.
Well, see, on my end, I have a lot of students who too just live with their fathers, maybe because it's high school, and mother may have tried, and they may be, a lot of those students are actually ones that are generally off track, right? So now they're living with their dad, and I know somebody that's going with that too. Now you're trying to erase or, build something up from you being gone or being unable to be in your child's life for whatever reason for the first 12 to 15 years. And now you're trying to correct course with only 3 years left. And I think that's been kind of difficult on fathers as well.
How so? So if I'm hearing you correctly, and make sure you correct me, the child or children, and we're talking boy children in particular, they've been with the mother majority of their life. They were there during the foundation of the years. Father just wasn't in place, and now
for whatever reason, mother or wasn't able to be around or whatever.
Now is that what you would consider to be the status quo in terms of the father not being involved, or is that the exception?
I'm mind my business.
Say, Tom, Ms. Chastity has a good point on the chat line.
Okay.
Go ahead and introduce that and let our guests talk on it.
If you could, because
that don't know what respect look like, and young ladies are in the same boat. That kids are growing up not knowing what respect looks like, so they can't grow into a respectful adult if they don't know how or they don't see that growing up. So.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
You were breaking up a little bit, Jimmy.
Yeah, I think my network is breaking up. She's talking about kids not knowing what respect looks like in an adult. So because they don't have a.
Yes, the difference is that many boys don't know what respect looks like. Girls also don't know how to speak and interact with adults and their peers.
So a lack of social norms or just.
Well, I guess you can't learn something that you don't see.
That you don't see, and I was going to bring that back too because you mentioned the point. I mentioned the point about role models, and you were talking about Black women doing better in school than Black men,
right.
And I think that too plays a role. And we do have those role models, right? So we're growing up, we're looking at our moms in the household working hard, cooking, taking care of us, giving us everything that we need, and in our mind, right? It's so even as I'm just speaking for myself. I can't speak for all Black women, but when I think about potentially raising a child, my mind has to be set that it's a possibility that I could have to do this myself. So the how hard I go may be different from someone else because I've watched a woman my entire life do everything by herself.
Gotcha.
So my drive may be different from a black man's drive. So I don't know.
The image and the model
Mm-hmm.
on the day-to-day basis otherwise has a huge impact. When you have a mother who is in the lead role, who is driving everything, sometimes working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet in order to get their children through school, and then a young girl seeing this growing up and seeing that model is different from a boy. And then on the other hand, we talk about this, a mother is hardwired. What is the old saying, Jimmy? We raise our daughters and love our sons. Yeah. And so the mother, in some cases, is hardwired a little bit different in terms of how she raises her daughters compared to how they raise their son. And so the outcome is going to be a little bit different. That's not in every case.
And there's also those gender norms, right, that come with cross racial barriers, right? Like a black man or a man in general are not known to be as talkative and like just chatty Cathy's. Like men normally aren't that. So even when you think about the classroom setting, it's the girls that are talking and the men are sitting back chilling. But I think learning takes place when there's dialogue, discourse. It just can't be a one-way interaction. So I feel like that may be playing a role as well. I've actually looked at the data with my students, and I can concur that that is the case with my particular demographic of students at my school. I have 110 students, about 60% Hispanic or 55% Hispanic, about 25 or 30% Black, and 1 or 2 white kids, right? But when I look at the data for a test, when it comes back and it's broken down, I see that my Black kids are getting lower test scores than my Hispanic kids, and their first language isn't even English. How? I see that my men are scoring lower than my women are. So as a teacher now, I'm picking my brain and I'm looking. Okay, well, let me look school wide. Okay, I'm seeing the same data trends across all the teachers in the school, so it's not just me. We have so many things in place for everybody except for Black people. America
Black boys, yes.
It's helping everybody except there's no program specifically in school, to my knowledge, that is there for the learning of African Americans. And we need extra attention too.
Gotcha. What say you, Mr. Zachary? Do you see similar results
on your end? I see the exact same thing. I see the exact same thing on my test scores. That's because we have standardized tests for 8th grade for STAR, and so we just took a mock STAR test not too long ago. I mean, and for tests we've taken this entire year. My Hispanic students are scoring much higher than my African American students, and like you said, the majority of them are ESL or English as a second language.
What would you consider to be the causal factors here? If you're looking at Black boys at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of performance, compared to their peers, compared to their other cultural peers, otherwise Latin American, Caucasian peers, in behind their own gender peers, Black women.
Well, Tom, who's there to drive the process? If you don't respect, if the mother doesn't have respect of her kids at home because they grow up, and these young boys don't have anybody to discipline in them to set their goals. They don't see a man going to work every day.
Well, the difference is this. So the question is this: is she a different mother to her girls than she is to her boys?
Yes, but the girl at least sees a successful person in the household that's like her. She sees mother go off to college, mother working, mother getting up every day, taking care of things, and the boys are for the most part being loved, but the mothers are telling their daughters, you need to grow up and make sure that you can take care of yourself and not be dependent on a man. So that message, young boys don't get that same message. If there's no father there to drive that process, then they grow up without having anyone to look up to. And that whole lack of respect is real because they don't respect mama, they don't respect the teachers. Eventually they have to respect the law or else they'll end up in jail.
I would completely agree with that, Uncle Mark. You're my uncle, my mother and my father.
Right.
I grew up in a 2-parent household. My mother is an educator. My father uh, start avid supporter of education.
Yes.
Um, so that was, it was never a question of, are you going to go to college?
Right.
So that was my household growing up. It is not the same for these kids. You know what I
And
mean?
I
My
have to
mother,
concur as well, like because I told you my grandmother had 5 daughters, right?
Daughters.
My one aunt that is married, she had 2 sons, and her sons own houses. They have careers. They went off to get their education. So there's something there, that makes a difference. But maybe because I didn't grow up with it, I don't know what it is. But there's definitely a difference between a black man who has his father in his life every day and a black man that does not.
Well, at least you have someone to pass on what they've learned about life and what to expect. Like when you grow up and you go out into the world, you have to behave a certain way. You have to do certain things. The threat of law enforcement or other people out there working against your interests is real. So young men have to
exactly,
learn how to navigate these treacherous waters that we call life.
exactly. I learned things from my father that I could not learn from my mother. Not that she wouldn't have wanted to teach me if she had to, but she didn't have to because my father was there to do that for her. You know what I mean? And that is what a lot of our youth don't have.
So what about the village concept? And when we talk about the village in terms of extended family, neighborhood, they say it takes a village to raise a child, and so maybe the father isn't there. But let's say we talk about the extended. And look, I don't particularly have a dog. I'm just putting
No,
some
no
things out there
village
because
child.
I'm hearing certain people say things behind me. When it comes to what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and I'm agreeing with what you're saying, but I'm also hearing other people, the little bird in my ear, saying, "What
I'm
about the
gonna let
village
our
concept?"
guest speak, but I'll be willing to bet that if either one of them were ever to, I don't know, get in the face of a child, chastise a child, cross over whatever the line is now, these parents would consider the teacher or anyone else in the village wrong as before they blame their child.
Now, see, maybe because I teach at high school level, the parents are well aware who their children are.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
I don't,
and
I don't call anybody's parent, and they're like, "You're." Well, there's one exception, but
And before we go further, folks, I do want to thank our audience out there who is listening to us right now. We're getting, some chatter on our chat line, and we have some people who are listening. But we need to remind everybody that you are please feel free to ask your questions via chat. And for those who are not too shy, you
Call
feel
in.
free to call in. We do
Yes.
have a call-in number. Feel more than free to call in. We would love to have you to
Join the
either ask the
conversation.
question. There you go. Join
Right.
the conversation, ask your questions, or provide your thoughts. But we have to, of course, make sure that we keep it respectful to our guests so that we keep it brief and that will give them a chance to share what they have to share. So in the meantime, let's go ahead and move on. We need to have a conversation because we're about 20 minutes until the top of our hour. And so we need to have a conversation with our fathers. More importantly, we need to have a conversation with Black men who are out there because of different circumstances. The father may not be in the household, whether that's because the father is deceased. Maybe the father is incarcerated. Maybe the father is, they had a divorce and they're remarried and they have a second household they're dealing with. There are different circumstances in addition to those fathers who are there for their children. The question and the conversation is having the conversation with father figures, role models, Black men, and the difference that they make for Black boys in particular, and quite frankly, Black girls too. Because let's not lose it. Even though we have a strong mama who may be working 2 or 3 jobs that may be a great role model, there are things that are missing when he is not there for the daughter child as well.
True.
But we have a crisis level conversation when it comes to Black boys because we understand that when the performance is not there, when they're not able to matriculate through school, gain the skills, gain the social skills, we understand eventually, Jimmy, where that unfortunately goes to too many of our Black men. And a lot of those are in confined quarters.
Yes.
And in some cases, those are underneath the ground just because of what they feel they have to do to adapt to survive in the hustle. So let's talk about that, Brother Zachary, Miss Burnett. Let's have a conversation with the fathers. What kind of conversation do we need to have? Let's put it out there. We're gonna start with Mr. Zachary first.
I mean, they need to be
because the thing about it is you are a father figure, even though you're not a biological father. I'm pretty sure to some of these young men, and they look up to you because they may not have that person there. But there are some guys out there who also are father figures, whether they know it or not. We have to have a conversation with them.
That's very true. I would say that being a male black teacher, that really helps, because I would say that majority of my students before they got to my class never had a male black teacher. I mean, I myself didn't have a male black teacher until my 8th grade year, the same grade that I teach now. And so, I mean, and like I said, of course, I was fortunate enough to have my father at home with me every day. But for those that did not, that, that you could tell that, or I can tell that they kind of warm up to me. We have open dialogue. We can talk. They ask us advice. We talk sports. You know what I mean? Just typical things that you might normally talk to your dad about. You know what I mean? And again, and I'm not the oldest guy, but like I said, I do feel that they can look up to me. We can joke around. We can talk. We can be open. They tell me things that I know that they wouldn't tell a female teacher, or that they probably wouldn't tell their mom, but I feel like we're comfortable because of my skin tone and that I'm a male. So yes, I do feel that is a very important aspect, being a male black teacher. And I feel that if we could get more, I feel like that could greatly help a lot of our black boys in school.
Well, there you go, Tom. There's one of the solutions. We need more black men teaching in the schools.
What say you, Miss Burnett? Talk to us. You don't have to be shy.
Oh no, I'm not shy. I just think your presence, just being there, whether it's you picking up your little cousins and you having a routine where you're hanging out with them once a month, right? So I'm the type of person where I start like inner circle. So I experienced a time where I was donating money to some unknown cause, right? And I realized every time my cousin would ask for $20, I'd tell her no. I'm like, girl, go somewhere. Why are you begging? But it hit me. I was like, I'm giving somebody I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know them. And I'm giving them that money when I could be giving it to somebody directly with me, right? So when you're mentoring, start from within, right? Do you have any black men in your family that you could take and you can hang out with, that you could talk to, that you could create some sort of event with, right? Spend time with them, mentor them, take them on college trips. Even if you didn't go to college, you don't need to have a college degree in order to do that. And not just college, right? Because I also think that we have this misnomer that the only way to success is through college. And don't beat me up, guys, because I don't know your opinions
there are a
about
lot of
it.
trades out there. We need workers.
Yes, trades. Yes. And I do believe that there's as much money out there for these trades as there is for college.
There, quite frankly, there's more money out there for trade professionals.
So setting the bar high, but it also has to be realistic, right? I have to talk to my black male students who have desires of being college or have desires of going pro football, but you're not getting the grades right academically here. Okay, well, let's look at the statistics of what percentage of NFL players are pulled fresh out of high school. What category do you have to be in order to be a part of that curriculum? So,
gotcha. It looks like we do have a caller. Welcome to Black Men Speak. Thank you for calling in tonight. Tell us your name, where you're from, and what your question or thought is.
Well, I'm Frederick Roberts. How you doing, Brother Duncan?
I'm doing great, Brother Roberts. How you doing? Thank you for joining me.
What's your question or comment?
My comment is I wanted to address the issue when you talk about the village. Mm-hmm. We have the same issues they're having in the schools are basically the same issue you're going to have in the community, because you don't have too many men in that village that it used to be. So you had the neighbors men. Mm-hmm. And so they have the same kind of reinforcement from the mama. Then they go to school, it's the female. And so that brings the point where we need to increase our participation in our male organizations that we have. We have a lot of fraternity organizations out there, Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We have to find more support from that group as part of that village.
And I'll have to concur with you on that. But the issue with that is that in order for most of these Black men to participate in those activities, they have to be financial. And it seems as though the fraternal organizations and the sororities will not allow you, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not in a Greek organization, but it appears that you can't be a part of those activities unless you're financial. And we all know that money is a big, it's a barrier right now in the Black community. So are you even allowed to use those fraternal organizations for those purposes if you aren't financial?
Brother Roberts, you have a response?
Yes, I think that, but there are some people in the organizations that we can reach out to them. I'm not trying to dismiss all of them, but there are some that you could get involved with.
Right.
And in addition to that, being financial or not, I mean, whether it's a fraternal organization, whether it's 100 Black men, whether it's Big Brothers, Big Sisters, there are a lot of different channels that you can use to get involved in the life of a young person. I mean, most schools, and I know probably not over the last couple of years, but they would typically have a career day or something of that nature where you would invite, adults who went to that school and didn't go to that particular school to talk to them about their life, their careers, and what they accomplished and things of that nature. They don't just have to be the famous people who were great athletes and turned out to be the great basketball player, football. These are just folks every day who are teachers, attorneys, doing whatever they do, showing that I came from this school just like you, and if I can do it, you can do it.
And also, Tom, when we talk about the village, we have to keep in mind that parents have to trust the people in the village with their children. And sometimes parents don't want to trust their children to just anyone. So if the parents don't know you, in today's world, we don't know our neighbors very well. Growing up, your parents knew people that lived on the street. So if Miss Jones came and said, hey, your son was cutting up and I had to give him a spanking, Mama just said, okay. Brought him in the house, and you probably got a second spanking and a third spanking when Dad got home. But now, you put your hands on somebody's child and say your child was cutting up, you may have charges filed against you. You may have a fight on your hand.
Exactly. And let's be quite clear, in some cases, there's reason that the parents shouldn't be trusting some people without the kids.
That is true.
I mean, I can't say that things that happen now didn't exist, Jimmy, when we were a little bit younger, but maybe it's getting a lot more exposure than was always there. But, you have to be very careful about it.
Yes, you do have to be careful.
And let's be very clear, some of them, to Miss Burnett's, point, you got to be careful who you bring around your children, even if it's somebody that you're dating.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
So, Brother Roberts, any other questions or thoughts? We appreciate you joining.
I just want to say that, one, I appreciate Miss Burnett's candor and the strength that she brings to her program, being female and having to deal with ninth grade males.
We're gonna, Miss Burnett is pretty tough now. She was a former cop, so don't think that she can't handle herself. I know she's got big kids in her class, but if she have to, I think she can handle up on some of them.
And let's be very clear: this is not just a former Frisco cop or Holland Park cop. We're talking about a former St. Louis cop. Okay?
Yeah,
and I want to say to Brother Zachary, thank you for staying in the course, man.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brother Roberts.
Yeah. I just wanted to say thanks to Brother Zachary too for staying in the fight.
All right, thank you very much, Brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we have another caller on the line. Welcome to Black Men Speak. If you could, please announce who you are, where you're from, and what question or thought that you have.
Hello, my name is Chastity. I am from Dallas.
Hey, Miss Chastity.
Can you guys hear me?
Thanks for joining us.
I gave a comment on the chat earlier. I'm also a teacher, and I teach high school, also ninth graders. And I do want to say, for as far as the solution of what we can do to help so many kids, because as one of the teachers said, you have a classroom with 20 or more students. You have 6 different classes throughout the day. So it's going to be difficult to reach all of those kids. So I would say there would have to be some route of using your technology. So many students are on their phones, they're on their laptops. There's some way that we have to get character building type material for these kids to view instead of the rappers and the different people that they're viewing that are speaking the way that they are speaking to adults and to their classmates. They need to get a more positive or a different perspective, and I will say a spiritual perspective of how they should interact and talk to other people. They need a different type of media and stimuli to see daily.
I agree.
No, that's a great thought.
That's
a great thought.
Point. Growing up, Tom, when I was very small, I grew up on Schoolhouse Rock. I learned the preamble to the Constitution from Schoolhouse Rock. I learned how the bill becomes a law from Schoolhouse Rock. I learned multiplication tables from Schoolhouse Rock. We need something like that. I agree with Chastity. Maybe not on that level, that elementary level, but some of our performers and rappers out there who our kids listen to, why not make some educational rap? Why not teach something positive in your rap music that kids listen to rather than the stuff they rap on now? I'm not even going to mention the foul stuff that they talk about, but
absolutely. Any other questions, thoughts, or recommendations, Miss Chastity?
No, I just wanted to speak on that because I know when we're trying to figure out how to help, and there's so many kids that need help because we have so many situations where there are absentee fathers, but also just with the whole mentorship thing, just not necessarily, there can be people who visit the campus if they are approved to do so. There are so many organizations, and as one of your speakers said, just being present. And just maybe at the time when a kid is acting out, and maybe if there are mentors in the building, they're able to talk to that kid that thinks it's okay to wear shades in the classroom and put their feet up on the desk and yell out explicit words. Maybe if there's a man walking by saying, "Hey, come here, young man, you shouldn't be behaving that way." It's that simple.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. We appreciate your thoughts. Any final closing words?
We're going to get you to be a guest on the show someday. You're a teacher also now. So,
all right, thank you. Great show.
We're going to track you down and invite you to the one of the future shows. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
So, Miss Burnett, Mr. Zachary, what are your thoughts about that in terms of the technology aspect? I mean, is there a practical way to do that? Because I mean, it sounds easy, but when you start talking about content creation, vetting, that kind of thing, I mean, they're going to be listening to the stuff that's out there. And you guys talked about TikTok. I mean, all the young people are listening to TikTok. Maybe that is a platform that you use. What are your thoughts on that? But we've got to get back to our closing comments. We're a little bit over 5 minutes about the brothers and what they have to do in order to turn the tables on this. Miss Zachary, Miss Burnett, Mr. Zachary.
Yes, TikTok would definitely be. I've been twiddling with the idea. I don't know how known I want to be, right? So I want to be impactful, but I don't necessarily want to be famous, right? So there's a different level of expectations that comes with that. But to whom much is given, I suppose much is required. But I especially the idea first that I appreciated the most was the idea of having mentors in the school. And I think that to piggyback off of my issue earlier was that there's nothing specifically in the school for Black men. We have these federal laws that are specifically geared towards those who are English language learners, but we have nothing for African Americans. This curriculum is already set up for by default, in my opinion, for the Caucasian population.
Yeah. How so? Tell me about that. Well, just so, for folks, people are just used to what they're accustomed to, but where's the difference?
For English, where I come from, it's my curriculum, I should say. This is not the English that I'm teaching. Is not the English that my students speak. And it's no different from this Spanish class. The Spanish that they teach being different from the Spanish that my students teach, right? So it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to grasp the concept. But I don't know. It's just that minor thing,
Gotcha.
we don't speak proper English, and that's
But
the way tests are written,
Right.
gotcha.
unfortunately.
This
I
is
mean,
going
not
back.
unfortunately, it is what it is, but
Right. This is probably Jimmy going back, and we're dating ourselves now, going back to the whole Ebonics conversation
Yeah.
about 25 some odd years ago. What do you say, Brother Zachary? What are your thoughts on that?
On the technology front, I
Mhm.
would say that the biggest thing would be to get kids to use the technology for things that they like. So I would say that if they like TikTok, try and have a lesson to where they make an educational TikTok. You know what I mean? Like they're using tools in the classroom to make a lesson using TikTok. Essentially, they're learning to teach a lesson, but they're using their phones and their technology that they love to use anyway. Several kids in our class, we have one of our teachers they do our morning announcements on the YouTube channel, and he has kids every morning coming on helping him make the actual video.
Wow.
They can
Okay.
come on, actually perform some, like do the announcements, make some announcements themselves, just to get them interested because they themselves, they said they want to have a podcast. Okay, cool. We can use that. Let's actually use what they want to do in an educational way. And of course, that's not going to work with everyone. Some are going to try to abuse that. But if you can get more interested in using the things that they're going to use anyway in an educational way, then that could lessen some of the battles that we fight with the technology in class.
Gotcha. Let's close out with these next 5 minutes about being intentional. And we're talking to Black men in particular, those who are fathers, whether they are in their households or not, and
They have to get
what
involved,
we
Tom.
have to be. I understand that. What does that look like? Of course, when you talk to most men, first thing, hey, I'm busy, got to work, got to pay the,
Your kids
got
have
to
to
pay
come
the.
first,
But
man.
I understand. Question being, there are a lot of guys, there are a lot of brothers out there who make a difference. Let's talk about what they have to do, being intentional. Some of them, for whatever reason, are not in the households where their children are. So the question is, whether you have children of your own, whether you're not, what's the message? What do we have to get done? We'll start with Brother Zachary, Miss Burnett, Jimmy. Of course, you can co-sign as well with your thoughts. Mr. Zachary.
I would say just being present as much as you can. If you live in the household, that's great. That means you have as much access as you need to your child to make a difference.
Mhm.
If not, if you don't live in the household, which majority don't, then you have to find a way just somehow to be involved. If your child is in extracurriculars, attend practice and go to the games. Like I said, I interacted with 3 fathers in 4 years because the fathers don't come to the games. They're not interested in practice, things like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, just being there. You know what I mean? My father worked, he traveled for work, but every day he would call if he wasn't at home. How was your day? What'd you do? This and that. He came to all of my games if he was able to. Came to my practice, talked to my coaches. Yeah, that's what it looks like to be present. You know what I mean? Like I said, even if you're not living at home, okay, the communication can still be there. You can be your child's contact. You know what I mean? Yeah, that can. It doesn't always have to be the mother, even though you're not at home with them every day.
Miss Burnett, what are your thoughts?
not only just presence but consistency as well, right? Because
That's
sometimes
powerful. That's
stepping into
powerful.
somebody's life and then stepping out can do more harm than it can do good. So you have to make sure that it's something that you're willing to commit to and not something that you're doing for the moment. But even if you have those situations where you may have your own children and for whatever reason you can't be involved in their lives, get involved in somebody else's. Even if it's a teen, don't the kid, and even if it's your child and they're pushing you away, that's what children are going to do. And you have to be resilient and you have to fight for what's important to you. If you love them, just sometimes as a dad, you just have to take those jabs and you just keep trying and not giving up until you can't, necessarily take it anymore. But you still have to show them what you're willing to do to have them as a part of your life and how much what they're worth basically to you. And to me, if I had children, my children would be worth everything. But that's again, what they call that Monday night quarterbacking, because I don't know, but I'd imagine that that's what it would be like for me.
Jimmy.
Well, if you look at ants and bee societies, they take care of the young. They're all brothers and sisters, but they take care of the young, and then when bees or ants hatch, someone has to train them on their job, either as a protector or a gatherer or take care of the queen, whatever your role is going to be. Someone's training you. The older ants. Just imagine what would happen if you gave up on your young. One, no one they would probably starve to death. They wouldn't know what to do when they became when they hatch. And this is where we find ourselves. We have a lot of kids that we're not taking care of. We're not training them for the future, and they don't know what to do in life. And they're learning from other idiots who don't know what to do either. So this is a dangerous combination that we find ourselves in. So we have to get back to a state where we're dedicated to training and preparing our kids for life. That's the number one function. If you're not training the next generation to take over, then you're dooming their future.
And I will add one thing to that. You said something, Ms. Burnett, that is very, very important. It's a part of that whole consistency piece. So, so the brothers that are out there with good intent, it's called character. If you say you're going to do it, do it. If you say you're going to be there, be there. If you say you're just going to call your child,
yes,
call them. If you tell them you're going to take them someplace,
do it.
Take them. Short of something, you're in the hospital, whatever the case is, you have to be a person of your word, because your children learn from you, good and bad.
Yes.
And if you, for whatever reason, maybe without malice in your heart, say you're going to do something for your child, with your child, you have to do it. As a man, you are responsible for it. That's what I'm going to add. So let me wrap this up. One, being present. Thank you very much, Brother Zachary. Being involved, getting involved in some small, being involved in a small capacity is better than being involved in no capacity. Being very consistent, Sister Burnett, being very consistent in what you're doing. Being a mentor, very important. There are tons of channels to do that, whether that is, through mentoring programs, formal or informal programs, or even just, with young guys who are in your neighborhood that you see, just talking to them, giving them sound counsel. It may not even be formal, but informal in a way. Obviously, male teachers, that's a structural thing. We've been talking about that for years, because that has a huge impact on the psychology of our young people in our schools. And I think that is about it. So I think there's at least 5 or 6 different things, small and large, that we as Black men, Jimmy and Mr. Zachary, can invest in the lives of not just our children, but our community. Because at the end of the day, we have to have strong Black men and Black women, and fathers chemically and scientifically play a huge role in the development of them both. So I want to thank both you, Mr. Zachary and Ms. Burnett, for joining us tonight. I'm going to give you just 30 seconds to give us your closing comments, and then we will go ahead and wrap up this show for tonight. But I just want to thank you so much for taking time from your busy calendars to be with us. Ms. Burnett, we'll start with you, and then Mr. Zachary.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say to anybody who has the opportunity to be in a Black person's life, just be consistent and don't give up, and it may get hard, it may get tough, but please don't give up. And as an English teacher signing off, do what you can to improve the literacy rates in our Black community. Because when you can read, you can write, you can do anything.
That's correct. Good message.
Okay. Also, I would love to thank you all for having me on. It was a blast. I loved it. Some great dialogue, great conversation. This was amazing. Also, like Ms. Burnett said, like if you have a chance, do something. Be present. Like I said, it can be the smallest thing to the largest thing. Like Tony said, just be a man of your word. Be a man of your word, character. You say you're gonna do something, follow through. It's one of the biggest things. And just be there. To be there. The kids really appreciate it if you're just there. Just listen to them, help them out, do what you can.
Jimmy?
If there are any parents out there, please invite your young men to come join our show. We'd love to hear from them, to hear firsthand some of the things they deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I want to say thank you to our guests, and thank you for everyone watching. And please come back next week.
Absolutely. And we want to thank our callers tonight, Brother Roberts, Ms. Chastity. We want to thank you both for your thoughts, your recommendations, and your contributions, Jimmy. And we will close it out from there. But typically what we do, Jimmy, I don't know if we have time to put in a short word,
Well,
a prayer.
we on the show, so we can make time. Go ahead, Tom.
All right, if we could graciously bow our heads. Dear Lord and gracious Father, we come before you this evening, thanking you for bringing us here today, Father. We thank you for breathing breath into our lives, Father. We want to thank you most importantly for Ms. Burnett, Mr. Zachary. We want to thank you for the work they do. We want to ask that you put your hands on them, protect them, cover them, continue to inspire them to do their greatest work in the lives of the young people that they touch on a daily basis, Father. We ask that you would bless them, you would bless their hearts, you would bless their minds, you would bless their hands, Father. Bless everything that they are doing on a daily basis that is contributing towards the constructive future of our entire country, of our communities, and doing that through our young people. Having teachers having the most important job, Father, probably with the one exception of being a parent. We just want to thank you for bringing them to us and blessing their works. Father, we thank you for blessing this platform, that you would continue to keep us focused on your work and the things that you are having us to do, bringing light to our community on a daily basis. And in your precious name we pray. Amen.
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 All right, Jimmy. I'm going to let you take it out from there.